Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to talk about all my top books of 2021. I chose 10 books that were my favorite of the year and I put them in a countdown order. So I'll start with number 10 and go to number 1. I will admit I was a little bit nervous when I originally was planning this video because honestly a lot of the books that I read in 2021 I felt were kind of middle of the road and I wasn't super excited about. So I was really nervous going into it planning this video because like, am I gonna have books that were in my top that I really enjoyed and I felt like that came above the rest? And there actually were. So that was a very good thing to find out because I didn't think I was gonna have that many to pick from. And actually came to exactly 10, so it worked out perfect. So unfortunately, actually a lot of my favorite books for the year I don't actually own. So I'm gonna hold up a picture for you so you can see the cover. Unfortunately, I just don't have these in my collection. Hopefully maybe one day, I don't know. But let's go ahead and jump in. So at number 10, I have Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This is TJ Klune's most recent release that came out in 2021. You probably have heard of The House in the Cerulean Sea, which is kind of his first big book that came out that a lot of people really loved. And I was really excited to read this one because I gave The House in the Cerulean Sea 5 stars. I was really excited to read this one. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. If you have not heard of this book before, it's about this guy and he is a lawyer and kind of think of like a Scrooge. He's not a very nice guy and he's just sort of living his life ruthlessly the way that he wants to live it and doesn't care about who he harms along the way. And then he ends up unexpectedly dead and he's not happy about it and he doesn't want to. It's a huge inconvenience to be dead. And he ends up meeting this reaper who's a kind of newly employed reaper, and she takes him to this man who owns a tea shop. And this person is, I'm blanking on what his title is in the book, but he basically helps usher people to the afterlife. People come to this tea shop, usually spend maybe a week there, sometimes even a few days, and then he ushers them to the afterlife to kind of prepare them to like come to terms with the fact that they're dead and prepare them for the fact that they're going to be moving on to the next step. And that's about all I'm going to say about it. I don't really want to say too much more, but it's just about this man kind of coming to terms with the fact that he's dead and learning to be a better person. I really enjoyed this book a lot. It didn't quite hit as hard as House in the Cerulean Sea for me because that one had kids in it and the kids in that were just amazing. But this one had a lot of heavy hitting moments, some really funny moments, some heartwarming moments, and it was just a lot of fun to read. So I really enjoyed it a lot. I apologize if you can hear a lot of like mechanical sounds. My husband is making bread and he's using the mixer. It's a little loud. My bedroom's right next to the kitchen, so sorry if you can hear that. But anyways, that is number 10. All right, the next one at number 9, I think has one of the most beautiful covers. I would hope to own this one day just because I want to be able to look at it all the time. And that is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This also, I believe, came out in 2021 as well. And it is a mystery. I feel that thriller is not quite the right way to put this, but I think I gave this 4 stars and I absolutely loved it. I loved the concept of it. It kind of follows dual timelines. In the present day timeline, we're following this woman who has recently gone through a really difficult spot in her marriage, and she ends up traveling to England and finds this old bottle on the beach. And she is super interested in history and she decides to track down where this bottle is from. Then flip to the past, where we're following this woman who has an apothecary shop, but it is a very special apothecary shop. She completely caters to women, and she secretly gives poisons to women who want to off men that are harming them. Either a husband who is abusive or a father who is abusive or I don't know, just like a different situation where women are trapped. It takes place during the 1800s in a time period where women just didn't have a whole lot of voice. And if they're trapped in a terrible situation, they're usually stuck there and there's not much they can do. So this woman is doling out poisons to women who need it to be able to get out of difficult situations. And these timelines end up converging together. And it is so fascinating. I really liked it. I felt like it was pretty fast paced. I liked the dual timeline. I was interested in both things that were happening within the timelines. And I really liked it a lot. There were some twists and turns I wasn't expecting, which kind of, I think, gives it a little bit of that thriller aspect, but it's definitely more like of a mystery, historical fiction kind of feel. And I really enjoyed enjoyed it a lot. So I highly recommend. So that was another one of my favorite books of the year. Next has, again, a gorgeous cover. I'm a sucker for covers where it has somebody's face and there's flowers involved. So House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This one was the dark fairy tale, grim fairy tale that I needed. I really enjoyed it. I ended up enjoying this way more than I thought I would. I think I gave this one 4 stars as well. It was so spooky and fantastic. Okay, let me back up. If you haven't heard of House of Hollow before, we are following these 3 sisters who, when they were younger, they ended up disappearing for an entire month and nobody knows where they went. Then they just randomly reappeared. They were naked and also they looked different. All their hair was white and their eyes were black. And they were also very earthreal beauties. They're just overly beautiful and alluring, and in a way that they're almost able to kind of like twist people to their will because of how alluring they are. And the girls don't remember anything that happened. They don't remember where they went. They don't remember anything. And it's a huge mystery. And ends up becoming like this mystery and huge popular folklore type thing to the people honestly all over the world. There's been some like TV specials and things on them and things like that. This mystery of these girls who disappeared and then returned and they have no idea where they went. Let's go to the future now. Now these girls are, I think, in their about early 20s, and the oldest sister disappears and the 2 younger sisters try to find out where she went, and they start to think that this older sister disappeared to where they disappeared to before, and they start learning more of the mystery of what happened to them when they were younger and just how they came to be the way they are. And it's really spooky. I think it's kind of listed as a YA horror, to be honest. There's definitely some body horror in it, if you can tell. Like the flowers are sprouting out of her face, and there's a lot of body horror, but I honestly really enjoyed it. I loved the creepy aspect of it. It definitely had some old fairy tale, folk tale vibes, which I really enjoyed a lot. It was weird, it was twisted, and I really liked it. So I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars as well. And it was just so much fun, and I recommend it. If you like grim fairy tales, you might like this one. I had a really good time with it. All right. Next, we're going to delve into something... Oh, wait, hold on, never mind. Number 7, and then I will be delving into a couple of books that are completely different than the kind of books I've been talking about. Okay, so number 7, again, another cover with a person with flowers, is Horrid by Katrina Leno. You see that a theme going on here? I really like these books. This story, I always struggle to explain, but... in this one, we were following this girl and her mom, and the father/husband has recently passed away, and they decided that they want to start fresh. Also, they have a lot of debt, so they're not able to stay where they're living. And so the mother is going to be taking her and her daughter, who's on the cover, back to her hometown. And in her hometown, her mother has actually inherited the old family home. The daughter knows that her mom left her hometown in like difficult circumstances, but her mom won't talk about it. She doesn't know very much about her mom's family. She doesn't know very much about her mother's childhood, why she didn't really want to go back to her hometown, but they end up moving back there. And once they move into this honestly old manor, some creepy stuff starts to happen. So it is a haunted house story, which is my bread and butter. I love anything that's like ghosty haunted house. And I really enjoyed this one a lot. I felt like it was smart. I loved the relationship between the mother and the daughter because it kind of gave me Gilmore Girl vibes in their relationship. And I liked the fact that they loved each other and they liked being around each other and they really cared about each other a lot. And I liked seeing that because sometimes in YA you see like the mom and daughter butt heads, and I really liked seeing how good their relationship was. I loved the fact that the mom wasn't really pushing aside any of the worries the daughter had about things that were going on in the house. I just felt like it was well written and smartly written with the characters. It definitely had some twists and turns in it, definitely spooky vibes. I really enjoyed it. So this was number 7. I really enjoyed it a lot. Okay, Now we're kind of delving into a bit of random. I don't personally read a whole lot of nonfiction, but I've been trying to get more into some nonfiction and specifically kind of like self-help and learning type books. I'm a Christian, and so I've been reading some different kind of Christian related books, devotional type things, or books that kind of help me learn more about my faith. And there are two books that actually I really ended up loving that landed on this list. So at number 6, this book is so pretty, and it is Beholding and Becoming by Ruth Chou Simmons. This is, I guess you could kind of say, a devotional book. It's specifically targeted to women and mothers, I would say, as well, as there's a lot of references to motherhood and things, but it is absolutely gorgeous. Ruth Chou Simmons is an artist, and this whole thing is like, when I first got it, I was like, oh, did I buy a coffee table book? Because it's got all these beautiful quotes and scripture and art, but it's basically has these different devotions. I can't remember how many days it goes through, but it references scripture and just talks about motherhood and being a mom and a wife, and just how a lot of times that can feel like it's very repetitive. You get tired of doing all the laundry, all the dishes, and all the things, and it's hard to find it says the art of everyday worship. It's hard to find ways to honor and worship God in what feels like mundane things and mundane tasks. So this was so good. I definitely need to reread this. I want to reread this again this year because it was just wonderful. I highly recommend it, especially if you are a woman in Christ and you just want to have some time to get to know God more, and how our hearts need to be set on Him, and honestly the everyday things that seem like they're not that important or just a kind of a pain to do. So I really enjoyed this a lot, so I highly recommend that one. Another one, I do actually own this book, but I can't find it. I let my husband borrow it, and I'm not sure where he set it. But this is a book I've recommended so much, I'd say in the past year, ever since I've read it, and I need to reread it as well. And that is A Praying Life by Paul E. Miller. This one, I absolutely loved this book. It really helped me rethink all about prayer and how we should pray. A lot of times we overthink praying and think that we need to talk a certain way or be a certain way while we pray. And this is just talking about it's okay to, if your mind wanders while you pray, it's okay to just be who you are while you're praying to God, because God already knows everything about you, right? He can see your heart. So I really enjoyed this one a lot. There's so much to it. It goes so in depth, but it's an easy read. It doesn't feel extremely, highbrow. It's written so well where it's just easy to follow. If you can hear pounding now, that is my husband pounding the bread and kneading the bread to get it ready to prove. So he's being very loud. I'm sorry. Anyways, I think Beholding and Becoming and A Praying Life, I think I both gave 5 stars. I really enjoyed them. They were so good. Highly recommend. Okay, now we're going to get back to fantasy and spooky books again. We just got into a weird little tangent in the middle. All right, so now we're moving from A Praying Life to book number 4, which is going to seem so off kilter from what I've just talked about. And that is, whoops, I picked the wrong one. Here we go. The Perfect Place to Die by Bryce Moore. I feel very uncomfortable going from A Praying Life to this because that's just, it's a weird segue. But this was number 4. I really loved this book. Let me tell you why. If you've not heard of this book before, it takes place in the late 1800s during the Chicago World's Fair. And if you know anything about Chicago World's Fair, and if you've heard of Devil in the White City by Eric Larson, you will know when this takes place, because this takes place during the H.H. Holmes murders, and that's what this focuses on. We are following this woman, and her sister has moved to Chicago. She knows her sister is working as a maid in a hotel, but she doesn't know which hotel. And then one day the letters stop coming from her sister, and so she ends up going to Chicago to try to track her sister down, because knowing her sister, she thinks something is wrong. And so she goes to try to figure out what is happening, and she ends up finding out which hotel that her sister was working at. This is not a spoiler, I promise. It's in the synopsis of the book. And her sister worked at the murder hotel, the Castle H.H. Holmes Hotel. And it is so good. She basically goes undercover at this hotel to become a maid there and to work there and try to find what happened to her sister, and I adored it. Something that was different about this book is the fact that, of course, we know the history, right? We know who H.H. Holmes is. We know what he did. We know up from the beginning, we know who the bad guy is, because we know who H.H. Holmes is. So it's really fun to read this book, because we're following our main character who doesn't know this, right? She doesn't know the castle, and she doesn't know that this hotel is basically built to murder people. Like, she doesn't know these things. So it's fun. I know that sounds weird to say fun. It's fun to watch her figure it out. And for you to like want to scream at her through the pages, like, don't trust him, because you know he's like the bad guy. you know he's completely evil, but she doesn't know that yet. And just like her trying to figure that out. So I really enjoyed this a lot, because I was really interested in the story and the history of it. I have like a morbid fascination with it. One of the other things I really like too is actually there's some maps depicted in this as well of the hotel, which I thought was really interesting and really cool to read. So I loved this one. I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So if you're interested in that particular thing of history, if you're interested in true crime, you might really like this. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. It's a really creepy name for a book, and it's got a creepy cover, but it was really, really good. All right, we are down to the top 3. Everybody get excited. All right. This is one that I didn't realize I read last year. I thought I read it in 2020, but there's no way I could have, because it came out in 2021. But it came out in January of 2021, so it feels like I read it, I read it a year ago. It feels like I read it over a year ago. And that is Across the Greengrass Fields by Sean McGuire. This is the 6th book, I think that's right. 5th or 6th book in the Wayward Children novella series that Sean McGuire has written, and I love this series. I think it's so much fun. It's all about portal fantasy. If you haven't heard about this series before, the first book, it centers around this school academy place where parents send their children who have gone to a magical world and then have returned. So think Alice from Alice in Wonderland, Pevensey children that go to Narnia, the Darling children that go to Neverland, that kind of thing. Think about those kids who have gone and then they returned. And it's all about, they go to this school and they're around these other kids who have also gone through this experience, and they're trying to adjust to life. Most of them are wanting to be able to return back to the magical world they were at, and it's just about them coping with the fact that they may or may not be able to find their door again. But the cool thing about this series is, yes, some of the books are connected, but a lot of them are very much just their own thing, and this is definitely one of them. You could easily read this one without having read any of the other ones, because this is about a character we haven't met in any other books, and it's solely just focused on her and her story. So we are following this young girl who feels very out of place in her life, and she ends up going through a traumatic experience with her best friend, and where her supposed best friend did something horrible to her, and so she ends up finding this door to this magical place. I don't remember the name of the magical place, but it's all equine, so all horse-related creatures. So centaurs and harpies, I think that's the name of another one. So like all the like fantasy horse-related type of creatures are in this world, and this girl is particularly like super fascinated with horses, and I adored this story. I loved the found family aspect of it. I love the world. It just gave me the vibes of like Narnia, that feel, and I really enjoyed this. I loved how it was just all encapsulated in one thing. It's again a novella, so it's a really quick read. I give it, I think, again, 4 out of 5 stars. Most of these are 4 out of 5, and I just really enjoyed it a lot. This one is, for some reason, I don't think did as well in the series. Not as many people enjoyed it. This one's my favorite in the series. I loved it. So I highly recommend it. So if you're interested in this particular book, you can read this one without having read any of the others. I promise. It won't spoil anything for you, and it's fantastic. It's so good. So, okay, 2 more left. All right. At number 2, this is one I actually own. It is the 3rd and I think final book in this series, and I'm hoping there's going to be more, but I think it's the final one, and that is Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab. This is the 3rd book in the Cassidy Blake series. It is a middle grade ghost series, and I adore it. It is one of my favorite middle grade series ever. and I've loved every single book in this series, and this one was so good. I gave it 5 stars and I loved it. If you haven't heard of this series before, we were following this girl named Cassidy Blake, and she had a near-death experience where now she's able to see beyond the veil. So she's able to see and communicate with ghosts. The funny part is that nobody else knows this really, and her parents actually end up starting a TV show where they go to different haunted places throughout the world and kind of do sort of this documentary style show, and she travels along with them. Her parents don't know that she's able to see ghosts, but she ends up becoming best friends with a ghost, and she has this cat as well, this cat companion, and I just adore it. The first book takes place in Edinburgh, Scotland. The second one takes place in Paris, and this third one takes place in New Orleans, and I love it. I love it because it's like traveling to these places, because there's like a map at the front of the book, and there's all these really cool, amazing real places that they go to and they visit, and I just love this. I love the friendship between Cassidy Blake and her best friend ghost Jacob. I love their friendship so much. I would die for Jacob. I adore him. He's amazing. I love him so much. So I love this book. I think this is the last one, and that makes me so sad. I really want Victoria Schwab to write more of these because they're so good. I've heard rumors that they're going to make a TV show out of it, which makes sense because of the fact that her parents have a TV show, so it would work. But I mean, I'm excited about that idea, but I want more books. I really want more books. Please, I want more Victoria Schwab. I love this series so much. It's so amazing. So I gave it 5 out of 5, and that was number 2. Okay. Number 1 book, and it makes me sad I don't own this one. I need to own this one because it was definitely, to me, the best book of the year, personally. And that is The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. You guys, this was classic 80s slasher film wonderfulness, and I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't heard of this book or this series, this is technically a 4th book in a series, but it's not. Let me explain. This is the same person that wrote the Truly Devious trilogy, and that trilogy is all about this girl who goes to this boarding school, and at this exclusive boarding school, every single kid that goes there has like a specific thing they're super interested in and that they are focused on. And our main character, her focus is true crime. She's obsessed with wanting to become a detective, and she's extremely interested in cases that have never been solved. There is a case that had never been solved at that boarding school. When the boarding school first opened, the boarding school's owner, his wife and daughter were disappeared. His wife was found murdered, and the daughter was never found, and it was never ever solved. And so this girl, she really, really wants to solve this case, and she ends up going to the school, and that's what the first 3 books are all about. Now, this book takes place after that main mystery storyline. This takes place in the summer, and this one is all about, she is invited to this summer camp, and back in the 80s, there was a murder that happened that supposedly happened by a serial killer, but the person was never caught, and they just never figured out the murders. And it's very classic 80s slasher film. So the owner of this camp invites her and her friends to come to the camp for the summer to work there, but honestly mainly to be there to try to see if they can figure out this old cold case. So you do not have to have read the first 3 books to read this one. There's not a whole lot that you need to know from the first 3. We do have recurring characters from the series, but I really don't think you don't have to have read the first 3 books. So this book is a mystery all on its own. It starts and finishes in this book. It is wonderful, and I loved it. It definitely, like I keep saying, it has that classic slasher film vibe. It's funny. It's scary, it's fast-paced, I love it. I love the friendships in this book, and I really enjoyed the mystery. I thought it was a lot of fun, and it was a good time, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. So I highly recommend this one. Again, just like Across the Greengrass Fields too, this is another one that's part of a series. You don't have had to read the other ones. You could just read this by itself. So I highly recommend it. 5 out of 5 stars for me. So good. My favorite book of the year. So those are my favorite books from 2021, I am so glad to be able to look back and to say these were my favorite books. Because when I look back most of the time, I think, what a blur of books. I ended up reading 95 books in 2021, and a lot of them were kind of meh, and so I'm glad to know that I had several books that I enjoyed. Let me know down below, please, what was your favorite book of 2021? What was your absolute favorite book? Please let me know. I would love to know, because if I haven't read it, I can maybe add it to my list. So thank you all so much for watching. On this side of the video over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel and follow me on my book journey. On this side of the video over here is a suggestion for another video if you want to watch another one right now. But again, thank you so much for watching. You rock. Can't talk. Don't forget to keep reading. Bye.